The crystal cities of Zarian Prime burned like fallen stars across the planet's surface. Admiral Zexfil watched from his command throne aboard the massive warship Void Render as another world died beneath his fleet's weapons. The bat-like creatures. Leathery wings twitched with satisfaction as the last defensive shields flickered and vanished. His entropy cannons had done their work well, turning solid matter into dust and dreams into nightmares. The Kethver Empire had conquered 47 worlds in the past year. Each victory came easier than the last. Their biomechanical ships grew stronger with every planet they consumed, feeding on the destruction like hungry beasts. The entropy weapons didn't just destroy buildings or kill people, they unraveled the very bonds that held matter together. Stone became sand, steel became rust, and living flesh became nothing at all. Zexil's black eyes reflected the dying light of Zarian Prime as he gave the final command. His ship's tendrils reached down through the atmosphere, drawing up the last traces of organized matter. The planet would soon be nothing but a ball of scattered atoms, another meal for the ever-growing fleet. The Admiral felt the familiar rush of power as his ship absorbed the energy, its hull plates shifting and growing larger. Far beyond the reach of the Kethver sensors, Captain Jake Morrison watched the slaughter through the long-range cameras of his research ship USS Meridian. The small vessel hid behind the frozen rings of a gas giant, its engines powered down to minimum levels. Morrison had been studying unusual energy readings in this system when the alien fleet arrived 3 days ago. Now he could only watch and record as an entire civilization vanished. Dr. Lisa Grant stood beside Morrison on the bridge, her face pale as she studied the readouts from their sensors. The xenobiologist had spent her career hoping to make first contact with alien life. She never imagined it would be like this. The data scrolling across her screens told a story of technology beyond human understanding, weapons that violated the basic laws of physics as humans knew them. "Captain, we need to leave now," Grant whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft hum of the ship's systems. "If they detect us... Morrison nodded but didn't give the order to retreat. His crew of 50 trusted him completely, but he could see the fear in their eyes. They all knew what would happen if the Kethver found them. The USS Meridian was a research vessel built for exploration and study, not combat. Her hull was thin, her shields were weak, and her only weapons were mining lasers meant for cutting through asteroids. "Look at this," Grant said, pointing to her analysis screen. "Their weapons operate on harmonic frequencies. They're not just firing energy beams, they're singing matter apart at the molecular level. But there's something else. The frequencies have to be precisely tuned or the weapons don't work properly." Morrison studied the data, his military training helping him understand what Grant had discovered. Every weapon had weaknesses, even ones that seemed impossible to defeat. The question was whether humans could find a way to exploit this weakness before the Kethver found Earth. The alien fleet began to move, their massive ships turning away from the dead world with slow, predatory grace. Morrison counted 300 vessels, each one larger than the biggest human battleship. The smallest Kethver destroyer was twice the size of his research ship. The flagship Void Render was so large it could swallow Earth's moon without trouble. "Where are they going?" asked Lieutenant Danny Martinez, the ship's navigation officer. His hands shook as he tracked the alien fleet's movement through the system. Grant checked her stellar charts and felt her blood turn cold. "The Centaurus Junction," she said. "If they take that hyperspace nexus, they can reach 17 human colonies. And from there—" "Earth," Morrison finished. He had studied the strategic importance of the junction during his military academy days. It was the key to the entire outer colonial region. Without it, the colonies would be cut off, isolated, and helpless. The captain made his decision. Instead of ordering a retreat to human space, he called his senior officers to the bridge. Chief Engineer Bobby Clark arrived first, wiping grease from his hands with an old rag. Communications Officer Susan Hayes came next, followed by Medical Officer Dr. Pete Wilson. "We're going to follow them," Morrison announced. The silence that followed was deafening. Captain, Clark said carefully, we can't fight those ships. We'd be space dust in seconds. I'm not planning to fight them, Morrison replied. I'm planning to warn the colonies. But first, we need to get Dr. Grant's data to someone who can use it. Grant nodded, understanding immediately. The experimental weapons program at Titan Station. They've been working on pulse cannons that use variable frequencies. If they could modify the design based on this data. Morrison turned to Hayes. Can you compress all our sensor data into a burst transmission? Yes, sir, Hayes replied. But it will take hours to reach the nearest relay station and days to get to Earth. Then we better hope someone at the Centaurus Junction is smart enough to figure it out in time, Morrison said. He looked around at his crew, seeing acceptance replace fear in their faces. They all knew this was probably a one-way mission, but they also knew it was the right thing to do. The USS Meridian powered up her engines and began to follow the Kethver fleet at a safe distance. Morrison sent the data burst toward human space, knowing it might be the last message his ship ever transmitted. Behind them, Zarium Prime continued its slow death spiral, a reminder of what awaited humanity if the aliens couldn't be stopped. As they traveled through hyperspace, Grant continued to study the alien technology. She discovered that the Kethver ships were partially alive, their hulls pulsing with organic rhythms. The entropy weapons were grown rather than built, cultivated like deadly flowers in the ship's biomechanical gardens. This explained why the weapons grew stronger with each victory. They were literally feeding on the destruction they caused, Morrison realized. They were chasing more than just an alien fleet. They were following a plague, a cancer that consumed entire civilizations. The Kethver didn't just conquer worlds, they devoured them completely. Leaving nothing behind but empty space and bitter memories, the small research ship raced through the void, carrying the hopes of humanity in her databanks and the courage of her crew in their hearts. Behind them, the Kethver Armada moved toward its next meal, confident that nothing could stop their eternal feast of conquest and destruction. Captain Alex Carter stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, watching the peaceful flow of civilian traffic through the Centaurus Junction. Cargo haulers and passenger liners moved between the hyperspace gates like fish swimming through coral reefs. The massive space station at the junction's heart buzzed with activity as ships loaded supplies and took on new passengers. It was a normal day in one of humanity's most important star systems. That peaceful routine shattered when the long-range sensors began screaming warnings. Lieutenant Susan Baker at the tactical station looked up from her displays with wide eyes. Captain, I'm detecting a massive fleet approaching from the Zarian system. 300 ships, unknown configuration. Carter felt ice form in his stomach. The Zarian system had gone dark 3 days ago, all communications suddenly cut off. Now he knew why. He moved to Baker's station and studied the sensor data, hoping against hope that he was wrong. But the energy signatures were unlike anything in human space. How long until they reached the junction? Carter asked. 18 hours at their current speed, Baker replied. Her voice stayed steady, but Carter could see the fear in her eyes. Every person on the bridge understood what this meant. Commander Patricia Holmes approached from her position at the operations console. Carter's first officer had served with him for 5 years, and he could read her thoughts in her expression. One heavy cruiser against 300 unknown warships was not a fight they could win. Orders, sir? Holmes asked quietly. Carter looked around his bridge at the crew he had trained and fought beside for years. The USS Defiant was one of the newest ships in the human fleet, equipped with experimental weapons and armor that had never been tested in real combat. Her crew of 800 was among the best in space, but even the best couldn't work miracles. Sound. General quarters, Carter ordered. All hands to battle stations. Send an immediate warning to all civilian ships in the system. They need to evacuate now. The ship's alarm began to wail as his crew rushed to their combat positions. Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez appeared on the bridge communications screen. From the engine room, Captain, I can give you 110% power, but the new fusion reactors haven't been fully tested at those levels. Do it, Carter said without hesitation. "We're going to need every advantage we can get." Dr. Rachel Stone called from sickbay to report her medical teams were ready for casualties. Marine Colonel Frank Davis confirmed his troops were securing the ship for combat maneuvering. Across the Defiant, 800 souls prepared for what might be their final battle. The evacuation of the Centaurus Junction began immediately, but Carter knew it was hopeless. Thousands of civilian ships used the junction every day, and the massive space station couldn't be moved at all. Even if every ship ran for hyperspace immediately, most wouldn't escape in time. "Captain," Communications Officer Linda Bell called. "Out. I'm receiving a data burst from the research ship USS Meridian. They've been tracking the alien fleet." Carter read Captain Morrison's message with growing understanding. The data package included detailed sensor readings of the alien weapons and a scientific analysis by Dr. Grant. The information painted a terrifying picture of an enemy that had conquered dozens of worlds with ease, but it also contained a glimmer of hope. "Their entropy weapons use harmonic frequencies," Carter said, sharing the information with his senior staff. "Dr. Grant believes our new pulse cannons might be able to disrupt those frequencies if we can get close enough." Holmes studied the tactical data on her screen. "Sir, our pulse cannons have a maximum effective range of 50,000 kilometers. These alien ships have weapons that can reach us from 10 times that distance. Then we'll have to get very close," Carter said simply. The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation. Rodriguez and his engineering teams pushed the ship's experimental systems beyond their designed limits. Baker worked with the weapons officers to modify the pulse cannon frequencies based on Dr. Grant's research. Holmes coordinated with the damage control teams, knowing they would be needed soon. As the alien fleet drew closer, more details became visible on the long-range sensors. The ships were unlike anything in human experience, their hulls seeming to pulse and shift as if they were alive. The largest vessel was 10 times the size of the Defiant, a monster that could probably destroy the human ship with a single shot. "Captain," Baker reported, "the alien fleet is dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge. They're forming attack formation and advancing on the junction." Carter watched the tactical display as 300 alien warships spread across space like a deadly web. His single ship stood between them and 40 million innocent civilians in 17 colonial systems. The mathematics were simple and brutal. There was no way the Defiant could stop such a massive force, but mathematics had never stopped humans before. "All civilian ships are ordered to evacuate immediately," Carter announced over the General Communications channel. "This is Captain Carter of the USS Defiant. We will hold the line as long as possible." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of cargo ships and passenger liners changed course, their captains pushing their engines to maximum power as they raced for the outer hyperspace gates. But hundreds more were too far away to escape in time. "Sir," Holmes said quietly, "we could retreat to the outer system and send a warning to Earth. Command needs to know about this threat." Carter considered the option for exactly 3 seconds. "No, if we run, those civilians die. Every minute we can delay the aliens gives more ships a chance to escape." The Defiant began to accelerate toward the approaching alien fleet, her experimental engines burning brighter than any star. Behind her, the evacuation continued as civilian ships fled in every direction. The massive space station began its own emergency procedures, launching escape pods filled with personnel who couldn't reach the ships in time. As they flew toward almost certain death, Carter's crew worked with calm efficiency. They had trained for this moment their entire careers, the time when duty demanded everything and offered nothing in return. Nobody complained, nobody questioned the orders, and nobody suggested retreat. "Alien fleet will be in weapons range in 30 minutes, Baker reported. "They're not responding to any of our communication attempts." Carter hadn't expected them to respond. The data from the USS Meridian made it clear that these aliens didn't negotiate or accept surrender. They simply consumed everything in their path and moved on to the next target. "Engineering reports ready," Rodriguez called from below. "All systems are running hot, but they're stable." Weapons ready, Baker confirmed. Pulse cannons are set to the frequencies Dr. Grant recommended. All stations report ready for combat. Holmes announced. Carter looked out at the stars one last time before the battle began. Somewhere out there, Earth continued to spin peacefully, unaware that its outer colonies were about to be devoured by an enemy beyond imagination. The people of those 17 worlds were counting on him and his crew to buy them time to escape. "Take us in," Carter ordered. The USS Defiant surged forward to meet 300 alien warships, alone but not afraid. Admiral Zexthel barely noticed a single human warship approaching his armada. From his neural throne aboard the massive Void Render, the primitive vessel appeared as little more than a speck of metal against the stars. His 300 ships, spread across space in perfect formation, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with deadly energy. The smallest destroyer in his fleet was twice the size of the approaching human craft. The bat-like alien's confidence was absolute. His entropy weapons had dissolved the defenses of 47 worlds without ever facing serious resistance. These humans would be no different from the countless other species that had fallen before the Kethver advance. Their technology was crude, their ships were weak, and their understanding of warfare was primitive. Captain Carter stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant as his ship raced toward the alien fleet at maximum speed. The experimental armor plating along the hull gleamed under the light of the system's star, its quantum crystalline structure designed from fragments of captured alien technology. Nobody knew if it would actually work in combat, but they were about to find out. Range to lead elements, 200,000 kilometers in closing, Lieutenant Baker reported from her tactical station. Her fingers danced across the controls as she prepared the ship's weapon systems. The pulse cannons had been modified based on Dr. Grant's research, their frequency patterns adjusted to match the harmonic disruption signatures she had discovered. All civilian ships have cleared the inner system, Communications Officer Bell announced. The space station is down to essential personnel only. Carter nodded, knowing that hundreds of cargo haulers and passenger liners were still racing toward the outer hyperspace gates. Every minute the Defiant could hold the aliens' attention would save thousands of lives. The mathematics were still impossible, but his crew had made their choice. Chief Engineer Rodriguez appeared on the bridge screen from the engine room. "Captain, I'm reading some strange energy patterns from the alien ships. It's like they're singing to each other." "That matches Dr. Grant's analysis," Carter replied. "Their weapons and communication systems both use harmonic frequencies. Are our pulse cannons ready?" "Ready and waiting," Rodriguez confirmed. "The frequency modulators are set to cycle through the entire spectrum Dr. Grant identified as potentially disruptive." The first exchange of fire lit up the void between the fleets. The Kethver ships opened with their entropy weapons, sending beams of pure destruction racing across space toward the lone human vessel. Reality seemed to bend and twist around the alien fire as the weapons attempted to unravel the very fabric of space-time. The entropy beam struck the Defiant's shields with the force of a collapsing star. The experimental defense screens flickered and sparked as they tried to deflect energy that attacked matter at the quantum level. Warning alarms screamed across the bridge as the ship's hull began to vibrate in dangerous harmonics, but the shields held. "Return fire," Carter ordered. The Defiant's pulse cannons spoke with voices of thunder, sending precisely tuned energy bursts racing toward the alien fleet. The weapons had never been fired in anger before, their experimental design based on theories that existed only in computer simulations. Now they would prove themselves against an enemy that had conquered worlds. The pulse energy struck two Kethver destroyers at the edge of the alien formation. Instead of the usual explosion of light and heat, something far more dramatic happened. The alien ships began to convulse and spark as their biomechanical hulls lost cohesion. Their entropy weapons flickered and died as the harmonic frequencies that powered them dissolved into chaos. Admiral Zexthel felt the shock of his ship's pain through the neural network that connected his fleet. For the first time in his long career of conquest, enemy weapons had actually damaged Kethver vessels. His absolute confidence cracked like glass as he realized these humans possessed technology he didn't understand. "Impossible," the alien admiral hissed through his razor-sharp teeth. "Their weapons are primitive. They cannot harm us." But the evidence blazed before his compound eyes as his two destroyers tumbled helplessly through space, their hulls cracking open like broken eggs. Emergency bioseals tried to contain the damage, but the pulse cannon energy had disrupted the ship's healing capabilities. For the first time, Kethver vessels were truly dying. The Defiant accelerated into the heart of the alien formation, using her superior speed and maneuverability to avoid the massive ship's attempts to target her. The human cruiser wove between the biomechanical giants like a fighter among bombers, her pulse cannons firing continuously as she sought out the most vulnerable targets. "Multiple hits on enemy vessels," Baker reported with amazement. "Their hulls are losing integrity wherever our weapons strike them." Carter allowed himself a moment of hope before the reality of their situation reasserted itself. They had proven the pulse cannons could damage the alien ships, but the Defiant was still outnumbered 300 to 1. Even if every shot was perfect, they didn't have enough ammunition to destroy the entire fleet. The Kethver formation began to break apart as panic spread through the alien ranks. Ships that had conquered worlds with ease now found themselves vulnerable to a single human vessel. Some of the smaller ships tried to flee while others clustered together for mutual protection. The perfect order of their advance dissolved into chaos. Commander Holmes coordinated damage control efforts as Kethver weapons found their mark. Despite the confusion, the ship's hull took several direct hits, opening breaches that vented atmosphere into space. Emergency force fields sealed the wounds, but the Defiant was bleeding air and energy with every passing minute. "Hull breach on deck 7, Dr. Stone," reported from sickbay. 30 casualties so far, but my teams are handling them." Marine Colonel Davis led boarding party defense as desperate Kethver soldiers tried to teleport onto the human ship. The aliens were fast and vicious, but human. Marines had trained for close combat since the dawn of warfare. Davis and his troops turned the ship's corridors into killing fields, proving that humans could fight as fiercely as any creature in the galaxy. The tide of battle shifted when Baker targeted the command cluster of ships surrounding the massive flagship. Her pulse cannons found the sweet spot in their harmonic frequencies, causing a cascade failure that spread from ship to ship through their neural connections. 12 vessels lost power simultaneously, their biomechanical systems shutting down like a row of falling dominoes. Admiral Zexville watched his fleet crumble with growing terror. These humans had discovered the one weakness in Kethver technology that his species had spent millennia trying to hide. The entropy weapons that made them invincible were also their greatest vulnerability. When faced with precisely tuned counter-harmonics, the Defiant continued her deadly dance through the alien fleet, leaving a trail of disabled and dying ships in her wake. But the human vessel was paying a heavy price for her victories. Her shields were failing, her hull was cracked in a dozen places, and her crew was pushed beyond the limits of endurance. "Captain," Rodriguez called from engineering, "I can't keep the reactors stable much longer." "We're burning through our emergency reserves?" Carter looked at the tactical display and saw they had destroyed or disabled nearly 50 alien ships. It was an incredible achievement, but it wasn't enough. The remaining fleet was still large enough to devastate the human colonies, and the Defiant was running out of time. Then the impossible happened. Long-range sensors detected new contacts. Jumping into the system, human warships racing to join the battle. Admiral Zexville realized his fatal mistake as he watched the USS Defiant tear through his formation like a blade through silk. By underestimating the human vessel, he had allowed it to penetrate deep into his fleet where his largest ships couldn't concentrate their fire without hitting each other. The single enemy warship moved like a hunting predator among his biomechanical giants, its pulse cannons finding target after target with deadly precision. The Kethver admiral tried to reform his scattered fleet, but panic had infected his ships. Through their neural network, captains who had conquered worlds without resistance now faced weapons that could actually kill them. Some vessels fled toward the system's edge while others huddled together like frightened animals. The perfect order of the Kethver advance had dissolved into chaos and fear. Captain Carter pushed his crew and ship beyond every safety limit as the battle raged around them. The Defiant's hull groaned under the stress of constant maneuvering, her experimental armor plates glowing red-hot from repeated impacts. Emergency klaxons wailed throughout the ship as damage control teams raced to seal hull breaches and repair critical systems. Commander Holmes coordinated the desperate repair efforts from her position on the bridge. Deck 6 through 9 have lost primary power, she reported. Engineering teams are rerouting through secondary conduits, but we're running out of backup systems. The ship's medical bay had become a war zone of its own. Dr. Stone and her teams worked miracles as wounded crew members flooded in from every section. Burns from energy weapons, decompression injuries from hull breaches, and broken bones from the ship's violent maneuvering filled every available bed. Yet somehow, Stone kept everyone fighting. "I need more surgical supplies," Stone called over the communications system. "And someone find me another doctor who isn't busy stopping bleeding." Marine Colonel Davis turned the ship's corridors into battlegrounds as Kethver infiltration teams attempted to board the human vessel. The aliens were fast and deadly, their claws capable of tearing through steel, but human Marines had been perfecting close combat for thousands of years. Davis and his troops proved that courage and training could overcome any natural advantage. "Boarding party neutralized on Deck 12, Davis reported between gunfire. "But they're trying to access our main computer core. I need more men down here." The battle's crucial moment came when Lieutenant Baker noticed a pattern in the Kethver fleet formation. Despite their panic, the alien ships were still connected through their biomechanical neural network. If she could target the right frequencies, she might be able to turn their greatest strength into a devastating weakness. "Captain," Baker called out excitedly, "I think I can cascade their neural network. If I hit their flagship's primary communications array with a focused pulse burst, the feedback should spread through their entire fleet." Carter looked at the tactical display showing the massive void render at the center of the alien formation. The flagship was 10 times larger than the Defiant, its hull bristling with enough weapons to vaporize a small moon. Getting close enough to target its communications array would be suicide. "Do it," Carter ordered without hesitation. The Defiant changed course, accelerating toward the alien flagship through a storm of enemy fire. Entropy beams lashed out from every direction, trying to catch the small human ship in their reality-dissolving embrace. The ship's shields failed completely as they absorbed hit after hit, leaving only the experimental armor between the crew and certain death. Chief Engineer Rodriguez watched his power readings climb into the red zone as he pushed the fusion reactors beyond their design limits. "Captain, if we lose containment, we'll take half the alien fleet with us when we explode." "Then let's make sure we hit the right target first," Carter replied. The void render loomed ahead like a metallic mountain, its biomechanical hull pulsing with malevolent life. Weapon ports opened along its flanks like hungry mouths, preparing to devour the approaching human vessel. Admiral Zexthal himself targeted the Defiant personally, determined to destroy the ship that had humiliated his mighty fleet. Baker waited until the last possible second before firing. The Defiant's pulse cannon spoke as one, sending a precisely tuned energy burst directly into the alien flagship's primary neural communications array. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The void render's entire communications system overloaded in a cascade of uncontrolled energy. The neural network that connected the Kethver fleet began to feedback and amplify, carrying destructive harmonics to every ship simultaneously. Biomechanical hulls throughout the alien fleet began to convulse and tear themselves apart as their own communication systems turned against them. Admiral Zexthal screamed as the feedback burned through his neural implants, sending waves of agony directly into his brain. Around him, his flagship began to consume itself as its biomechanical systems lost all coordination. Weapons fired randomly, life support failed, and the ship's living hull started digesting its own metal framework. The cascade effect spread through the Kethver fleet like a plague. Ships that had shared a neural connection for centuries suddenly found that connection becoming a conduit for destruction. Smaller vessels simply exploded as their systems overloaded, while larger ships began attacking each other in blind confusion and pain. "Multiple enemy ships are going dead in space," Baker reported with amazement. "Their entire command structure is collapsing." Captain Carter seized the opportunity, ordering his exhausted crew to target the remaining functional ships. Each successful strike sent more Kethver vessels into chaotic retreat or self-destruction. The alien empire that had conquered worlds with ease was crumbling when faced with genuine resistance and human ingenuity. The USS Defiant continued her deadly work, hunting down command ships and communication nodes throughout the scattered alien fleet. Her pulse cannons had become instruments of liberation, freeing the galaxy from an enemy that had seemed invincible just hours before. But the victory was coming at a terrible cost. The Defiant's crew had suffered over 200 casualties, and the ship herself was barely holding together. Rodriguez reported that the fusion reactors were approaching critical failure, and the hull stress readings showed metal fatigue throughout the vessel's frame. "Captain," Holmes said quietly, "we've done the impossible. Maybe it's time to withdraw and let reinforcements finish the job." Carter looked around his battered bridge at the crew who had followed him into hell and somehow found a way to win. They had proven that no enemy was truly invincible when faced with human determination and tactical innovation. The tide of an entire war had turned in the space of a few hours. "Not yet," Carter said, watching the tactical display as more alien ships fell to their guns. "We finished what we started." The battle raged on as the USS Defiant wrote her name in fire across the stars, proving that sometimes one ship and a brave crew could change the fate of the entire galaxy. Behind them, civilian ships continued their escape toward human space, carrying word of an impossible victory against overwhelming odds. The USS Defiant delivered her final blow to the massive alien flagship with the precision of a surgeon and the force of a thunderbolt. Lieutenant Baker's targeting had been perfect, sending the last pulse cannon burst directly into the Void Render's primary power core. The explosion that followed lit up space, like a newborn star as the biomechanical giant tore itself apart from within. Admiral Zexthal's death cry echoed through the Kethver neural network like a scream of pure agony. Every ship in the alien fleet felt their commander's final moments as his consciousness was burned away by the cascading system failures. Without his guiding intelligence, the biomechanical vessels began attacking each other in confusion and terror, their shared connection becoming a source of madness rather than strength. Captain Carter watched from his damaged bridge as the alien empire that had conquered worlds with ease finally crumbled. The remaining Kethver ships either fled toward the system's edge in panic or turned their weapons on each other in blind rage. The neural network that had made them invincible had become their destruction when faced with human ingenuity and determination. "Sir," Communications Officer Bell called out, "I'm detecting multiple human warships jumping into the system. It's a full squadron led by Captain Helen Murphy aboard the USS Valor." Carter felt a wave of relief wash over him as reinforcements finally arrived. The Defiant had held the line long enough for word of the battle to reach other human ships in nearby systems. Now fresh vessels with full ammunition loads and undamaged hulls could finish what his crew had started. Commander Holmes appeared at Carter's side, her uniform torn and stained with smoke from the countless fires they had fought throughout the ship. "Orders, sir. The alien fleet is scattered, but there are still functional ships out there." Carter looked around his bridge at the crew who had achieved the impossible. Every station showed damage from the prolonged battle, and several positions were unmanned due to casualties. The Defiant herself was barely holding together, her hull cracked in dozens of places and her fusion reactors running on emergency power. "Alone," signaled Captain Murphy, Carter said. "Tell her the field is hers, we've done our part." The USS Valor and her escort ships swept into the system like avenging angels, their weapons already charged and ready for battle. Captain Murphy had received the tactical data from the Defiance engagement, including the precise frequencies needed to disrupt Kethver technology. Her ships were equipped with hastily modified pulse cannons. Based on Dr. Grant's research, the final phase of the battle was swift and decisive. The scattered alien ships offered little resistance to the fresh human vessels, their command structure shattered and their morale broken. One by one, the remaining Kethver vessels were either destroyed or driven from the system, ending the threat that had seemed unstoppable just hours before. Chief Engineer Rodriguez appeared on the bridge, his face blackened with soot but his eyes bright with triumph. "Captain, I've managed to stabilize the reactors, but we're going to need a complete overhaul before this ship flies again." "We pushed her harder than any vessel should ever be pushed." Carter nodded, knowing that the Defiant had given everything she had and more. The experimental cruiser had proven herself in the most demanding test possible, standing alone against impossible odds and emerging victorious. Her crew had paid a heavy price for that victory, but they had saved 40 million lives in the process. Dr. Stone arrived on the bridge with her medical report. "Final casualty count is 237 wounded, 41 dead," she said quietly. "But every one of them died knowing they made a difference. We stopped an empire today." The bridge fell silent as the crew absorbed the cost of their victory. 41 brave souls had given their lives so that 17 human colonies could continue to exist. Their sacrifice would be remembered and honored, but the pain of their loss would stay with the survivors forever. "Sir," Lieutenant Baker said, from her position at the tactical station, "I'm receiving a priority message from Captain Morrison aboard the USS Meridian. He's requesting permission to dock and transfer Dr. Grant's complete research data." Carter smiled for the first time since the battle began. "Permission granted. And Baker, send a message to every ship in the fleet. Dr. Grant's pulse cannon. Modifications are to be implemented immediately on all vessels. We're going to need them." The research data from the USS Meridian became the foundation for a revolution in human military technology. Within weeks, every ship in the human fleet was equipped with pulse cannons capable of disrupting Kethver biomechanical systems. The alien empire's expansion ground to a halt as their supposedly invincible weapons proved vulnerable to human scientific innovation. Captain Carter stood in the observation lounge of the damaged USS Defiant, looking out at the stars where 17 human colonies continued to thrive. The weight of 40 million lives no longer pressed on his shoulders, replaced by the satisfaction of duty fulfilled and a job well done. His ship had proven that no enemy was truly unstoppable when faced with human courage and determination. The Centaurus Junction bustled with activity as rescue ships arrived to help with repairs and evacuation of the wounded. The massive space station had survived the battle intact, and civilian traffic was already beginning to return to normal levels. Life went on, as it always did after great victories and terrible costs. News of the impossible victory spread through human space at the speed of light. The story of one warship holding the line against 300 alien vessels became legend. Almost immediately, recruitment offices on every human world were flooded with volunteers eager to serve aboard ships like the Defiant, vessels that could face the impossible and emerge triumphant. But Carter knew the war was far from over. The Kethver Empire still controlled dozens of conquered worlds, and there were undoubtedly other fleets scattered throughout the galaxy. The victory at Centaurus Junction was just the beginning of humanity's fight for survival and freedom. Admiral Zexthel was dead, his flagship was destroyed, and his fleet was scattered to the stellar winds. But somewhere in the darkness between stars, other Kethver commanders were already planning their revenge. They had learned that humans were not the easy prey they had expected, and they would adapt their tactics accordingly. Carter didn't care. Let them come with their entropy weapons and biomechanical ships. Humanity had announced its presence in the galaxy not as victims to be consumed, but as warriors who would fight for every world, every life, and every star in their domain. The age of easy conquest was over, and the age of human resistance had begun. The USS Defiant might be damaged and her crew exhausted, but they had lit a fire that would spread throughout human space. Other captains would follow Carter's example, other crews would stand against impossible odds, and other ships would prove that courage and innovation could overcome any advantage. The galaxy would never be the same.